Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard skeptics say that the Bible, well, the New Testament documents in particular, have more errors in the manuscripts than there are words in the New Testament? Have you heard that? Has that, if you're a Christian, kind of alarmed you? Have you heard that there are other gospels out there? I mean, you know, the Da Vinci Code from 20 years ago had that very popular book said, oh, there's all these other gospels, and the church just decided the gospels they wanted to leave out because they didn't agree with them. But there are other gospels out there. Why weren't they selected to be in the Bible? And how do we even know these people were telling the truth? Even if you're going to say that we have the right Bible and the manuscripts can be compared so we can figure out what they originally wrote, how do you even know that what they said really happened? They could be making all this up. Well, we have an expert with us today who's put together with another expert a video series that's ongoing. And the video series has to do with the reliability of the Bible. The reliability of the Bible, because a lot of people are doubting the reliability of the Bible. And this video series will help you in short order figure out how to answer those big questions. The video series is put out by Apologetics Canada. It's called Can I Trust the Bible? And one of the authors is with us. We had him on the podcast last week. It is the great Dr. Andy Steiger. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Andy, welcome back to the program. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. And yeah, thanks for that. What an intro.
Now, before we get into Can I Trust the Bible, I want to point out that Apologetics Canada, the website, apologeticscanada.com, has some amazing resources. In fact, the infographics tab under resources has some great drawings. I think most of them are made by your colleague, Wes Huff, who is almost finished his PhD. And for those of you who don't know who Wes is the guy that had that debate with Billy Carson, and that got him onto the Joe Rogan show. So for 3 hours on Joe Rogan, they talked a lot of apologetics. But we were just talking off the air, Andy, and this couldn't come at a worse time for Wes personally. Why? What's going on?
Oh, well, Wes is just in the midst of finishing his PhD. So, you know, you I know you did your doctorate as well. Mm-hmm. And that last year, and particularly the last few months of your dissertation writing, are crucial. And honestly, my heart just goes out to him because he's wrapping this thing up, and life couldn't be busier. Frank, this is how bad it is. Okay. Mm-hmm. Our inbox currently that we've been working on daily is currently at 470 in the inbox.
You mean like 470 requests for interviews?
Yeah. And all sorts of things. Yeah. Uh-huh. So that's just madness, you know, and of course there's all these great opportunities. So you want to say yes to all of these things, but he's in an interesting position.
Well, you guys have an open invitation. You can come on the show anytime you want. Our show anyway. That. And so, you know, I mentioned to Wes, hey, you know, whenever things free up, you want to be on the show, that's fine. You know, if you don't, that's fine too. But
well, that's the thing. He wants to. That's the challenge. He wants to. But like, how do you fit it in? I mean, have you ever been so busy that you just have this moment where you're like, oh my goodness, there's only so many hours in a day. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's where he's at. But honestly, that's where Apologetics Canada is at. We've been going viral for over a month now. Mm-hmm. And the amount of opportunities has just been unbelievable. The stuff going on is unbelievable. God's doing amazing things, but it's exhausting all at the same time. And then that poor guy's having a PhD over.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I were him, I would take every secular request that I could, because I know they're not going to last very long. Right. Like a show like ours, you know, we're always happy to have a guy like Wes on, but the reason that they want to probably have him on now is because, well, he was just on Rogan, and that's going to fade eventually. So he should, if he can, take as many of those opportunities right now to reach a broader audience.
Now, I have a couple of things about that I think are interesting. I agree. Uh-huh. It is interesting, though, to me. I feel like we're in an interesting cultural moment that you do have so many secular podcasts that are interested in having conversations about God.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
I haven't seen that in my years of ministry. That's unique. But I want to ask you a theological question that my staff is unsure of me, because we've been talking about this. Whose podcast do you go on? Who do you not in the secular world, right?
Yeah.
And I said to my staff, I said, listen, if Satan asked me to be on his podcast, I'd say yes.
Sure. Yeah.
If I could go on there and share the gospel, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
My staff isn't sure what to do about that. How would you answer?
My answer is this, and my answer is when somebody invites you on their show, they're agreeing with you. It doesn't mean you're agreeing with them.
That's right.
Okay. So I'd say the same thing about a church that I thought was teaching something heretical. Like if a prosperity gospel church said, would you come and teach? Yeah, as long as I can say whatever I want. Yeah. Right.
That's my idea, because I'm going to tell you the gospel, man.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll tell my staff you agree. Frank Turk agrees with me.
Yeah, so. A progressive church, if they said, hey, Frank, you can come say whatever you want. Yeah, I'm there. I want to reach those people. But if they're going to say, no, you can't say this and you can't say that, okay, forget it. Right. Now, look, obviously, if he's being invited on secular podcasts, they're not going to all agree with him. But that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Let's have a dialogue. Give the answer for the hope that you have. Give the reasons for the hope that you have. Just do it with gentleness and respect. And he does that. And you do that. That's what we all try and do. I mean, I've been on shows that I know they didn't agree with me completely. Dave Rubin, who is in a same-sex marriage himself. I was on his program, and I'm grateful for him for inviting me on. I had him on my program. We don't agree on everything, quite obviously, but we're broadening our audiences to reach people that we might not be able to reach. So
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
It is interesting, though. We have this weird culture that says, oh, you can only be on certain podcasts, or because somehow you're tacitly agreeing with them by being on their podcast. But I'm like, listen, I'm an evangelist. If you're going to give me a chance to tell people about Jesus, I'm going to do it.
Hey, did Jesus speak to the Pharisees? Did he agree with the Pharisees? No, that's why he was talking to them. Come on. So, and he spoke to the Sadducees, and they didn't believe in the resurrection. That's why they were sad, you see. But he was talking to them because he was engaging with people. I think he wanted to win people as well, quite obviously. Yep. And he opposed them where they were wrong. And we need to do that as well. Unfortunately, in our culture anyway, people think that feelings are more important than facts. And if you in any way tell somebody something that's true and they're offended, well, you can't say that. Well, you're not following Jesus's model then, because he did that all the time. They killed him over that. So
it is interesting, by the way, because I think something that we could say, is kind of juxtaposed to that is our culture right now. Tell me your thoughts on this, Frank. But our culture right now is very interested. Well, first of all, I would say our culture seems very open right now.
Yeah.
To God.
Yes.
And our culture is such a culture about dunking on people that there's like this skepticism to like, I don't know if I want this person coming on my show or having a conversation with this person, because are they just looking to talk about God to dunk on me sort of idea. But one of the reasons, I think one of the reasons why Wes got invited on the Joe Rogan podcast is because of the way that he treated Billy Carson with respect. And the motto at Apologetics Canada is love God, love people. And I think he saw that and thought, you know what, I'd like to talk with that guy.
Yeah. Well, the thing I like about Rogan is that he is a good interviewer, and he is interesting. He is interested. He wants to know what people think. And I think that's refreshing because.
But did you notice something though in that interview when he is interested, but did you notice his hostility towards atheism? I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, he had some of that probably because the atheists are so dogmatic, unlike him, right? He's saying, hey, I want to talk. Let's just talk without all the consternation here. He's open to having these conversations. I mean, he does 3-hour shows, right? And he's open to that. And atheists, traditionally, it's the new atheists, are almost cancel culture people, at least some of them, right? Yep. Although I will give credit to people like Richard Dawkins, who are not that way. I mean, Dawkins may come off as a curmudgeon, but he's for free speech, right?
Yeah, he's had his moments.
Yeah.
He's had his moments where I think he's kind of changed his ways at some level. Because I remember when he gave a talk in Washington, D.C., when he encouraged atheists to mock and ridicule.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that. You're right. Yeah, he's past that now.
But he is. He honestly is.
Yeah.
He's past that because he's realized, wait, maybe this Christianity thing isn't so bad after all.
Yeah, especially since Islam is encroaching on the UK right now. And the MPs over there, the government can't even investigate child rape by apparently Muslim men. They're hiding all that. I don't know if you've heard any of this, but
I haven't. That's new to me.
Oh yeah, you got it. Well, it was a bigger story a couple of weeks ago, but the government is so far left over there, they won't even investigate child rape by gangs of allegedly Muslim men, Pakistani men. And these crimes have gone on for years over there. So they're so into political correctness over there, thinking that if they say anything negative or even prosecute a crime, that's somehow called Islamophobia. And Richard Dawkins gets this right when he says, look, Islam is not a race, it's an ideology. You've got Muslims of every different ethnicity and every different country. And it's an ideology. It's not racism to say, I think some of the teachings of Islam are harmful. That's not racism. That's wisdom.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also how a democracy operates is that we can disagree with one another. We can challenge each other on those ideologies. But that's the problem. I mean, that is a philosophical move to go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to make this a race conversation because now it's a conversation stopper.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's if you even bring this up somehow, you're a racist. Which that is a cancel culture conversation stopper. They don't want to have a debate. They want to cancel the debate by calling you names. And in logic, we call that an ad hominem attack. And it's also the genetic fallacy to try and say that because of the source of an idea, it automatically has to be right or wrong. No, not necessarily. You got to evaluate the evidence to see if what the person says is correct. Extreme example. Hitler thought smoking was bad. He was right about that, even though he's Hitler. Okay. Right? So anyway, let's get to the topic of what we were originally going to talk about, Andy, because you have this fascinating, it's 2 parts right now, 20-minute videos each. Folks can go to Apologetics Canada, click on resources, and see this 2-part series that will be added to called Can I Trust the Bible? And you and Wes Huff went to Egypt. I don't know why you went in the summer, man. I went just last month in December and it was perfect, but you went in the summer.
We made a strategic error, Frank.
It was like 122 degrees Fahrenheit over there.
It was. And we had one day that was even hotter than that. When we were driving, we didn't do any filming on that day, but as in the series, there's a moment where we actually get stuck in a sandstorm. One of the things I wasn't able to share about that is that sandstorm had cut off all the electricity, and because the water was on pumps, so it cut off the water. And it was fairly miserable at times in Egypt. And in the summer, nobody goes to Egypt in the summer for a good reason. It's also, by the way, one of the reasons why Egypt has so many artifacts in it.
Yes.
Is because most of the year it's too hot to go there to steal anything.
And it's so dry that things don't degrade.
That's right.
Like papyrus, which the New Testament manuscripts, many of them were written on. And so this new documentary, Can I Trust the Bible? You deal with the manuscript evidence. And I started at the top of the show saying, well, people like Bart Ehrman will say there's more errors in the manuscripts than there are words in the New Testament. What's Bart Ehrman getting wrong?
Well, this is something that we hear all the time. And that is that you and I need to appreciate, first of all, that when we're talking about manuscripts, we're talking about handwritten documents. And if anybody that's listening to this thinks that when they write that they don't make any mistakes, they're kidding themselves, even when you're just trying to copy something.
I sometimes misspell my name.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, Frank, we didn't even have dictionaries. It wasn't like there was standardized spelling in the past. So that, it makes it so where people go, oh, there's errors in the Bible. Well, of course there are. People make spelling errors. They make, errors
in the manuscripts. In the manuscripts, that's what you mean.
Yes, thank you.
Not the Bible, not the autographs itself.
That's right. And we make that distinction.
Yeah,
so we're saying that there is the autographs, that these don't have mistakes in them, that, that this is God's inspired word, but they didn't have photocopiers. Okay. Like how do you get that out? You are hand copying these, and over time you're going to have mistakes that in the copying of these manuscripts. But that's the beauty of the Bible that I've really come to appreciate. And that is that we have so many manuscripts. Then people like Bart Ehrman will say, oh, well, look at all the mistakes. Well, he's saying that because we have so many manuscripts. But the reality is that we can then take those manuscripts, and by analyzing them, we're able to see where those mistakes are. And one of the things that people that are hearing this should just take courage in. If you're hearing this and you're like, oh man, there was, by the way, the vast majority of these mistakes are just simple copying errors in
spelling, word order. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Punctuation.
But the Bible doesn't hide this. So if you, in your modern Bible, if you go, read in your Bible and you see just take a look at the footnotes in your Bible, because if there is ever a discrepancy, it's documented. It's not like we're hiding these things. They're there for you to see. So if you're wondering, I wonder what's in there. If there is any issues, we'll just go look at a footnote and it'll tell you if there was a variant. But the thing is, we have so many manuscripts that we're able to see that. You see, we wouldn't even know that if we didn't have the vast amounts of manuscripts that we do have, that gives us great confidence that we can know what it says. Here's an example, by the way, Frank. A friend of mine just told me this. He was listening to an audiobook of a book called Scribes and Scripture, where it's talking about how we got the Bible through this scribal culture. And in the audiobook, the reader repeats a line twice. And so my friend was thinking, I wonder if that's in the original. So what does he do? Well, he goes and grabs the book, and then he's looking in to see, well, where's the variant? Well, the variant was in the audio. I mean, in other words, the same thing can happen today, but we can check it to see, and then we know, it's an error, and we can see that, and then we can document it.
Yeah, if we only had one manuscript of the New Testament, now that it didn't come in one manuscript until much later, but if, let's say, you only had one copy of the book of Romans, there would be no errors in it, but you wouldn't know. There's no way to know if there were an error crept in, because you don't have anything to compare it to. So actually, the more differences between the texts are just a result of the fact that we have so many copies that when we compare them, we can reconstruct the original with more than 99% accuracy. So it's really not a problem. Right. It's actually a demonstration of the vast number of manuscripts we do have.
Yeah. Which should encourage you.
Yeah.
And manuscripts that date very early. And then we can actually do something different as well, where we can actually look at the text itself and ask, well, when was this written? And we can do, interesting analysis even there, where we can ask, say, I'll just give you one quick example that people might find interesting. Mm-hmm. Take Acts chapter 12 as an example. It tells us that James, the brother of John, was martyred. Mm-hmm. Well, that is the only disciple that we're told, besides Judas, that dies in the New Testament. Mm-hmm. We don't hear about the death of Peter, don't hear about James, the brother of Jesus, right? These would be more. James, the brother of John, is a lesser disciple, and we're told about his death, and we're not told about the others. Well, the conclusion clearly is they haven't died yet.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yet Josephus tells us that James, the brother of Jesus, died in the year 62.
That's right.
So it's one of those things where I could go, okay, the Bible doesn't tell me that James, the brother of Jesus, died, but Josephus does. Well, clearly, when we're looking, say, at Acts, well, clearly then James, the brother of Jesus, hasn't died yet.
Yeah. And Paul hasn't died yet. He's still in house arrest in Rome by the end of the book of Acts. That would make no sense to talk all about Paul's life and leave him alive under house arrest in Rome. If you're writing this in, say, 80 AD, as some people say, Luke wrote it, there's no way he wrote it that late. It'd be like talking about the Bible, like following Martin Luther King around and not talking about his assassination. You'd go, well, this had to have been written prior to his assassination, right? You wouldn't.
Exactly.
So So there's so many manuscripts, and you point that out, and it's very well produced, ladies and gentlemen. You can go to apologeticscanada.com, click on resources, and look down at video resources. You'll see Can I Trust the Bible?
You can check it out on YouTube as well.
Yeah. That'll take you right to YouTube, actually, that link.
Yeah.
I watched it earlier today. It's very well done. So that's one sort of objection you get, all these errors, which aren't really a problem, because you can reconstruct the original. What about the different gospels? We hear that a lot, Andy, and you cover that in the documentary. There's the Gospel of Thomas. So why didn't you include that? Or the Gospel of Judas, or the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, or the Gospel of Peter? Why aren't those in the Bible, Mr. Smarty Pants?
We do hear about these, and that's one of the reasons why we made the series, actually, Frank, because we're like, you know what? We just want to take you to where they were found. We want to just tell you the story of how these were found. So if that's something that's of interest to you, check out the series. We go to a place called Nag Hammadi, which is where what's referred to as the Nag Hammadi Library. It's where we found the Gospel of Thomas and others. And we knew that although we didn't have a copy before them, we knew that it existed because the early church fathers actually wrote out against these. So they're like, they're already warning, hey, this isn't. These aren't part of the Bible. And in fact, that's one of the challenges that arose, is that, we do plagiarism different now in the 21st century than they did in the first century. These days, what we want to do is we want all the credit. So, Frank, I would steal your good ideas, and you've got plenty. And then I would just, if I wanted to plagiarize, then I'd just say that they were mine. But in ancient times, they did it differently. What they wanted to do is they wanted to popularize not themselves, but their ideas. So they would take a famous name, and then they would put their ideologies to that name. And so Gospel of Thomas then is a famous disciple. So I'll put my thoughts to his name and then popularize that. But in the series, what we talk about, and just to be clear, this isn't my area of expertise. It's Wes Huff's area of expertise. And I was his sidekick on this project. We talk about the story of how we got those and why they were not included in the Bible, and actually talk about how these date much later than the Bible, and that the early church knew that these were not to be included. And as I've looked at early church fathers, none of them are going, should we put Gospel of Thomas in? No, they're not even asking that question.
Yeah, they were, as you point out in the video, written in the 2nd century. Thomas and Judas and Mary Magdalene and Peter, they were long dead, so they couldn't have been written by those people. They also
have these errors in them, where they're using Egyptian names that date to the 2nd and 4th century. You can just clearly tell that somebody is trying to write something as though it took place at a certain time, but they're not living there at that time. And so they don't even know which names to get right.
That's very interesting. I remember reading that in Richard Bauckham's book, Jesus and the Eyewitnesses, that name comparison. Turns out the New Testament documents, the Gospels, get the names right for that century in that place. But if you go to, say, the Gospel of Thomas or any of these other Gnostic Gospels, they get the names all wrong for the 1st century Israel.
And this actually really encouraged me, Frank, in my studies, is to see that not only does the Bible get the right names in the right place, but they get the right qualifiers, or what we'd call nicknames or disambiguators. That when, Peter is a popular name, so he gets the name, he's given the nickname Simon. Or you've got these other names that are popular, even like Andrew. So you will get a qualifier, Andrew, the brother of, James, right? James, the brother of John, so that you and I don't get confused on, which James are you talking about? Which Peter are you talking about? And that is really interesting, because as we've looked at what are the most popular names, the Bible gets it right every time. When we're talking about the most popular names, always get a qualifier. Names that are not popular, like Bartholomew, they don't get a qualifier. And it's just very consistent. Well, that gives you good confidence that it was written when it says it was written. You also point out in the documentary, again, the documentary is called Can I Trust the Bible? There so far just 2 20-minute videos, but more are coming. You point out that the Gospels in the 2nd century, which are forgeries, are not narratives. They're more like sayings. Why is that important? Well, it gets back to that that ideology.
Okay.
Oftentimes people will ask me, "Oh, what do you think about the Gospel of Thomas?" And one of my initial responses is, "Well, have you read the Gospel of Thomas? Have you read, any of these that you're wondering about?" Because when you read them, you quickly realize, okay, this person has an ideology. They've got this worldview that they're trying to popularize, and they're trying to attribute this to Thomas. But it does not read anything like the Bible. It reads like somebody's ideology that they're trying to popularize, and strange ideologies to boot.
Yeah, it's like 114 sayings, and it's kind of like a secret knowledge, right? This Gnosticism. And they don't really make sense, these sayings, unless you're in the know. If you're in the know, then you know how these very mysterious sayings, what they really mean. And so
they're mystery religions.
Yeah.
And we have those today, right? If you pay the right amount of money, if you're in the right group, we'll tell you what the mystery means.
Oh, yeah, like Scientology or something like that. you gotta pay all this money to go to the next level to get those engrams out of your head or whatever. Yeah. Well,
people haven't changed over time, man. The same thing.
The third thing you guys dealt with a little bit, not extensively yet, in addition to dealing with the so-called variance between the manuscripts and the Gnostic Gospels, the 2nd century Gospels, you deal a little bit with, well, how do we know they told the truth? We could have an accurate copy of a lie, right? What do you deal with in the video there?
Well, one of the things that I love about the Bible, and just take Luke and Acts as an example. Luke is so careful and detailed in what he describes, that he's demonstrating what we would understand as history, that he's seeking to give an accurate history. And when we look at what Luke writes, he's accurate, and he does a good job. He's a first-rate historian. And this, by the way, Frank, this always kills me with Christians. Christians will ask me, because they want to know if they can trust the Bible. So they'll be like, Andy, are there any other works outside of the Bible that talk about?
They say that all the time, don't they? Yeah.
They say it all the time. It's like, is there any other works outside of the Bible that talk about Jesus or this or that? And I'm like, you don't understand what you have in the Bible. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the Bible, we're talking about, the best works from antiquity when it comes to reliability and trustworthiness. They're the gold standard. And so don't discredit them.
Yeah, in fact, Luke, if you look at the book of Acts, he gets 84 details right from chapter 13 to the end of the book, chapter 28, that only an eyewitness or somebody who knew an eyewitness would know. These are like geographical details and obscure rulers who lived in a certain time, ruling in a certain place. He even gets weather patterns right, water depths right. Luke is telling you the truth. We have all these listed, and I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, ladies and gentlemen. Luke is an historian of first rank, I think William Ramsey said, who started out skeptical as an archaeologist looking at Luke 100 years ago. And when he was done, after spending 20 years following Luke's footsteps around the Mediterranean, he goes, this guy knew what he was saying, knew what he was doing.
And what's interesting about this, by the way, have you noticed, Frank, over the years, historians constantly call Luke into question. Oh, Luke's telling us this, but we don't have any evidence for that. And then lo and behold, an archaeologist will dig up a stone and go, oh, Luke was right again. We have so many of those over and over again. And it kind of just bugs me eventually, because you're just like, man, he's got a good track record. There's you have good reason to trust that he's telling you the truth, that he put together, as he said in the very beginning, an orderly account.
It's interesting you bring that up. Scott Stripling, who is an archaeologist who found that curse tablet there on Mount Ebal, where Joshua's altar probably was. At least that's where the Bible says it was. Lisa Childers once asked him, have you ever discovered any archaeological discovery or made an archaeological discovery or heard of one that disagrees with the Bible? And he said, well, there was one for a while that Luke said that when the people tried to get that paralyzed guy to Jesus by taking the roof off, that passage there, that Luke talks about the roof having tiles. Well, tiles weren't known to be first century. They were second century. So Luke is wrong because he's saying these tiles were in the first century when we know they were only in the second century. Well, then it turned out that Scott Stripling found a archaeological site that had tiles in the first century, which would affirm Luke. So he writes it up and he sends it to some archaeological journal, and they say, well, this can't be right. Why not? Well, because we know that tiles only existed in the second century. Because, well, he says, I've got new evidence. It's the first century. Well, don't confuse me with the facts, son. This is the position we have here at this journal. It can only be second century because we've already determined that.
It's funny, but that we see that sort of thing happen repeatedly. But yet the Bible over all these years continues to demonstrate that it's trustworthy. And archaeology continues to show that.
Now, Andy, what else is coming up in this series? Because I noticed it's just 2 20-minute lessons right now, but you're going further than that? How much further?
Yeah, so we're set to film in April and May. People that want more information on that, you can check out our socials. Because we're going to be filming and then posting on our socials daily on where we're going and what we're doing. This next series is going to be about how we got the Bible. Hold on a second.
All right, go ahead. He's taking a break. While Andy's doing that, I want to mention that I'm going to be, Lord willing, at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, on February 12th. That's Lincoln's birthday. And of course, it'll be live streamed. The next week, Lord willing, we will be at William and Mary University near Williamsburg, Virginia. And right after that, I know I'm going to be out in California and then Dallas. I'm going to be at, Revival Christian Fellowship. That's February 23rd, Sunday. That's Menifee, California. The great Pastor John Miller is down there. This will be the 3rd year in a row I've gone there. Great church, Calvary Chapel. Then I'll be at the Empower Conference, the Southern Baptists of Texas Convention. That's the 24th and 25th, Lord willing, of course. I keep saying Lord willing because I know what James says. Oh, you're going to go here and go there. And your life is like a vapor. You might not be here tomorrow, you know? And we found that with that tragic plane crash last week. Continue to pray for all the people affected there, and also pray that people will realize that life is very short, that we could be here one day and gone the next, and we've got to make a decision to follow the Lord or not. And of course, we think you ought to follow the Lord. You ought to love God and love others, to know God and to make him known, because we're talking about eternity here, friends. We're only here. Even if you're an atheist, we're only here a short period of time. Yeah. So Amen. There's something beyond this world, and that something is eternity with or without Jesus. So make sure that you figure that out sooner rather than later, because you might not even be here tomorrow. Anyway, Andy, you were saying.
Yeah, thanks for letting me cough there. Appreciate it. So this new series is on how did we get the Bible.
Okay.
We'll be talking about how the Bible came to be. I find there's a lot of questions about that. And then as well, we're going to be talking about why does, what are those things that Protestants don't include in their Bible where the Catholics do, such as the Apocrypha. So we'll be looking at that as well. How did that history come about?
Okay, great. We're looking forward to that. And I also want to point out that Apologetics Canada if you do click on resources, you'll see another tab called infographics, and Wes has put up a number. Yep. Wes Huff has put up a number. Infographics. Yeah, great, like just drawings and graphs and charts of all sorts of different interesting, both apologetic and theological issues that you're going to want to avail yourself of. So they're all free. Just check them out. They're just sitting up there. So Andy, what else is coming up? What do you want to tell our audience? Tell our audience about your podcast, your website, all that.
Sure. Well, one thing that we got coming up that people might be interested in is we have the Apologetics Canada conference happening in British Columbia that you, Frank, have been at. You spoke at that conference a number of years ago. Mm-hmm. Loved having you. People are interested in that. If they're local, they could come out or they could join us on live stream. And we have a podcast that we do weekly that people could check out as well, the Apologetics Canada podcast.
All right. Well, it's great stuff, ladies and gentlemen. So go to apologeticscanada.com, check all that out, go to the resources, see what they have there. Look at their speaking schedule. You must have like 25 speakers, Andy. They're all over Canada, aren't they?
They are. We have quite a list of adjunct speakers. The amount of requests are more than we can facilitate, and we've got a great group of speakers that do speaking engagements for us all over. It's pretty cool.
Hey, before we go, tell us Americans down here below you, what's the kind of vibe in Canada right now in terms of God and Christianity and religion? Because we just generally look at you guys up north as even more liberal and more probably secular than, say, California is. What's the truth? Do we have that right?
You know, here's the thing. I think I can speak to this because I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, and I've now lived in Canada longer than I lived in the U.S., so I feel like I'm an honorary Canadian in that regard. But I would say that it depends, Frank. It really just depends. I think there's some issues that we are more conservative, and there's issues that you guys are more conservative. Like, we go back and forth, and there's some things you're doing that's crazier than we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to go back and forth. But where we seem to be winning in the crazy area in Canada these days is with what we call MAID here, medical assistance in dying, or euthanasia, doctor-assisted suicide. We're off the charts in that one. We unfortunately are leading in the world on that, and that's because Canada does some things that I think not to open up a can of worms, but we have some policies that are really quite secular, that shockingly so. So, for example, in the United States, if you wanted to kill yourself in some place like Oregon, you got to get a prescription, and you actually need to do it yourself. In Canada, doctors will kill you for you if you want. And sadly, we have places in Canada where they are mandated that they don't have to do the killing, but they actually have to give an effective referral in places like Ontario and Nova Scotia. That is really quite out of this world. Unbelievable what's going on here. And then they've tried to legalize, making it legal that people with mental illness can also have access to doctor-assisted suicide. So it's a real challenge. Honestly, pray for us up in Canada. We've got serious challenges here, but we are hopeful with an election looming for us that the tide could change. As you could imagine, the disgust up here in Canada for Justin Trudeau is quite high, so much so that he resigned. And now there's an election that's going to take place, and I'm telling you, the desire for change is palpable here. We don't want to continue to go down the path that we're going.
When is the election?
For us, in Canada, it could happen in any time it gets called. It has to happen within the next few months here. It's probably going to start taking place in March, but it's anybody's guess on when it's exactly. So
is Trudeau still serving right now, or is there someone else in power?
Well, that's the thing that just makes Canadians frustrated, is you got President Trump coming into power while Justin Trudeau resigns and ultimately has left the government closed. Our government's closed right now. And now you've got, you have Trump threatening 25% tariffs with a closed government. So we're like, man, Justin, when you couldn't make anything worse, you somehow figured out how to make things worse. So that's where we're in a real bind here. Now, Trump then pushed when he's going to do the when he's going to do these tariffs. Yeah. But as you can imagine, we have a lot of tension that we're feeling here in Canada.
Now, there is, I know, a very articulate conservative spokesperson, Pierre, what's his last name?
Pierre Poilievre.
Do you think he will be the next prime minister?
I think everybody believes that he will.
Now, he does not speak on the life issue at all, as far as I know. I don't know where he stands from a faith perspective. Will he be someone that you think might push back at least on the doctor-assisted suicide, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, puts pressure on people to kill themselves to get out of the way and not be an expense. So it puts pressure to actually kill yourself if you have this option in a culture like that. I don't want to be a burden to anybody. I don't want to run down the inheritance. And so sometimes the family may be tempted to try and get rid of an older person because of this. In any event, what do you think Pierre will do? Any idea?
You know, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what he's going to do on that one. I think that for Canadians by and large vote with their pocketbook, not their morals.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think personally what he's going to focus on is the pocketbook. Trying to figure out, he's got enough issues to deal with. I think he's going to focus on the economy. And then what he's going to do from there, I'm not sure. But one thing he has said, though, is that he's not going to entertain all of this gender politics and the ideologies around gender that have, taken over in both the United States and Canada. And that, I think that's one thing that he has talked about. I can't remember a specific time that he's talked about, with regards to MAID.
Well, here in the United States, what a difference leadership makes, because Trump has almost single-handedly flipped the narrative, I think, in the culture, even though it was going in that direction anyway, to say, let's stop with all this gender confusion. We just have men and women. And also all the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, which really isn't about diversity, equity, or inclusion. It's about favoritism. That seems to be going away based on Trump's lead. I think it was going that way anyway. And now he's had several pro-life executive orders, which are taking money away from abortion from the federal government and freeing pro-lifers who are unfairly persecuted by the Biden administration. So leadership does make a difference on those issues. Whether this is going to last or not, I don't know. But the church really needs to be engaging on these issues and teaching their people the biblical view on these issues to influence the rest of the world. We shouldn't count on our politicians to do this all the time. The church ought to be the change agents, and too often, too many of the churches are just avoiding these issues tragically. I don't know how it is in Canada, but that's the way it is here.
Yeah, it's similar. It's a similar situation.
With notable exceptions. I mean, you got your Jack Hibbses out there and others who are dialed in on this, but unfortunately, many people think that all we're supposed to do is get people saved. No, that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to make disciples, and that means you're a Christian 24/7, 365 everywhere, including the voting booth.
One thing that I have seen the Christians really unite around, though, is this issue of MAID, and it has been making a difference.
The assisted suicide, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, it's always a pleasure. Second podcast in a row. Great talking with you. And,
great to be with you.
And the great work you're doing up there at Apologetics Canada. Friends, go to Apologetics Canada. Check it all out. apologeticscanada.com. Check out their podcast as well. And Lord willing, we will see you here next week. God bless.
If you're looking for solid answers to life's biggest questions, don't miss the latest episode of I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. Find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeart, OnePlace, and Podchaser. Tune in, discover the truth, and share it with someone who needs it. Let's keep spreading the truth together.